guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the difference between someone who is narcissistic and someone who has Narcissistic Personality Disorder, or NPD. Stay tuned. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and I don't think there's a lot of content out there on this topic. So I think it's a really important video if you've ever dealt or want to learn about narcissism in general and like what exactly it is. And it may be surprising for you to learn that there is a difference between a narcissist and someone with NPD, but they actually are quite different from one another. So in this video, I kind of want to talk about the differences, like what makes someone narcissistic versus someone that has Narcissistic Personality Disorder, which is a mental health disorder. So a narcissist is someone that is high in narcissistic traits. That's all it takes to be a narcissist. And I'm going to go over what those traits are in a minute. Someone with Narcissistic Personality Disorder, or as I'm going to refer to it in this video, NPD, is someone who is high in narcissistic traits, and they're also experiencing dysfunction in their life because of these narcissistic traits. So in order to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder, a couple things need to be true. The first thing is your life does need to be impacted or dysfunctional in some way because of the mental health condition. This is usually in areas of social dysfunction, so like interpersonal relationships or relationships with other people, and occupational dysfunction, which would be problems at work. And you're probably sitting there going like, hey, my life has been majorly impacted and dysfunctional because of a narcissist, or I work with a narcissist and it makes my job very difficult. But that's not enough for that person to be diagnosed with NPD. The person that has the disorder needs to experience those things. Which leads me to the second criteria for a mental health diagnosis. The person must be experiencing personal distress. And that's kind of a fancy way of saying that they're suffering in some way. Something about their life is really hard because of this condition. And when we look at other mental health diagnoses like depression or generalized anxiety disorder, it's really easy to see how these two things can be true for someone that has those disorders. Because things like anxiety and depression make life really hard. They make it hard to do the things you need to do in life, and they also cause a lot of distress to the people that have them. And one of the issues that we see with narcissism is that someone who's narcissistic isn't necessarily being impacted themselves, they're impacting other people. And that is not enough for a diagnosis of Narcissistic Personality Disorder. The person that has NPD has to be the one that's being affected. This is why we don't see a lot of NPD. NPD is not diagnosed very often. It's estimated that anywhere between, I think I read 4 to 8% of the population is diagnosed with NPD. It's not something that we see because a lot of these folks, they don't come and they don't get help for NPD. They might come and get help for something like anxiety. They might get help for something like their relationship is dying, and we can definitely see those traits come out then. But unless the person is specifically stating that I'm having a hard time because of the traits I'm about to go through, we cannot diagnose it as Narcissistic Personality Disorder. So what are the traits of narcissism? I'm going to go through all of the traits that is composed of someone that has both Narcissistic Personality Disorder and is a narcissist. The first thing, and it's probably the most common thing that we think of when we think of a narcissist, like a classic textbook narcissist, is a grandiose sense of self. They're people that can do no wrong. They have this high, exaggerated sense of self-importance. They are always the best of the best at everything. They're the top of the top. They are overly and extremely competitive. And they feel this way regardless if they really are true experts in whatever it is or if they aren't. It generalizes to a bunch of different areas of life. They don't have the ability to be like, yeah, that person knows more than me in this particular topic. Like, that doesn't happen. It's not a thing. Trait number 2 is that they are entitled and they require excessive admiration from other people. Part of narcissism is that narcissists are not able to self-validate. They can't look at something and go, wow, I did a really good job. I worked really hard on that. I'm happy about what I just did. And then have that be enough. They can't do that. They have to get that from others. Them saying that themselves isn't enough. They have to have admiration from other people. A concept that's talked a lot about with narcissists or people with NPD is that they need something we call narcissistic supply. This is not a want, this is a need for someone who's a narcissist. They need to have the supply, and the supply comes from validation and admiration from others. They need to be told that they're awesome. They need to be told that they're all of these things and that they're so great and wonderful. They need to be recognized as superior, even with achievements that don't warrant it. Number 3, they often exaggerate their achievements and their talents. Basically, they lie a lot. They add a little bit of fluff. Something might have happened, but they're gonna add a little bit more fluff to it to make it seem even more awesome. Or sometimes, and what we see with people that are more of a covert narcissist, is that they'll acknowledge that they didn't get this achievement, or they didn't get, they didn't get that degree. But it's not their fault. I mean, no one noticed how awesome they were. No one took the time, or were really able to see their true uniqueness and specialness, and so that's why that they didn't get that PhD that they were going to get and that they were entitled to get, and they should just have it. The next trait, they spend a lot of time fantasizing about things like beauty, success, power, the perfect relationship, or the perfect spouse. And these thoughts, they take up a lot of time, and usually, frankly, they're pretty unrealistic expectations of how life actually goes. This is different than you setting goals for yourself and wanting to do well. That's very normal. That's actually an indicator of good mental health. Now, this is different. They're constantly fantasizing about being the best of the best and the greatest, no matter how it affects other people. They want perfection 24/7, all of the time. They want to be seen as the most successful and the most brilliant person that there ever was. The next trait, they only like to associate with people that they believe are as great as them. And they look down at people they believe are inferior to them. They're not going to associate with people that they don't feel have achieved or are on their level. Next trait, they believe that they deserve special treatment, and they do not like their demands being questioned at all. They want total compliancy. If you ever want to see the dark side of a narcissist, don't do what they're asking you to do, or question what they're asking you to do. Even questioning what is being asked of you is going to set off something that we call narcissistic rage. Narcissists do not take well to being questioned. This is why they can make really, really tough people to work with. They can make really bad coworkers, and they can make really bad bosses. And unfortunately, these people do usually end up in positions of power because narcissists, and they are quite driven people. They really, really do want to be top dog. The difference I always tell people between someone who has worked really hard to get to where they are and a narcissist is usually a narcissist has no problem ripping down and tearing everyone they need to get to where they are. They don't do well with concepts like team effort and teamwork. They need to be at the top of the chain. And that kind of leads into the next trait, which is they take advantage of other people to get what they want. A narcissist will love you when you have something that they want. They're not going to love you for you, but what they want to get from you. The next trait is they lack empathy. They really struggle with recognizing and understanding the feelings of other people. This is part of the disorder, and I think it's a big part of where people get stuck, like in narcissistic relationships, or thinking that they can change a narcissist. Is I just need to convince them, how they're making me feel. Like once they realize that their behaviors are hurting me, they're not going to want to hurt me, and they're going to miraculously, they're just going to change. And no, this does not happen with narcissists. It doesn't. They don't have the cognitive abilities to be able to understand what other people are going through or put themselves in other people's shoes. Literally, there is something going on in the head of a narcissist that makes this very hard for them to do. They can only do it usually in very limited ways. I'm not going to say narcissists completely lack all empathy, or that they're more in like the kind of the sociopath realm of things. They might be able to have some empathy, but it's not necessarily ever going to be at the level that someone that isn't a narcissist has. It's just not going to ever look like that for them. Even with treatment, this part tends to be extremely hard to change. Really only are able to see how they're feeling, and this is actually related to something else that narcissists don't have, and that's something we call theory of mind. Narcissists don't have a theory of mind. They don't have the ability to know that other people might have a different perspective from theirs. And a lot of victims of narcissistic abuse, they say things like, they just think they know me better than they know myself, or they tell me all the time how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. And no, they're not doing that. They're not telling you how to think and feel. They're telling you basically how they're thinking and feeling. They don't have an ability to take a different perspective from their own. The next trait, they're arrogant and they're boastful. They want the best of the best. They have to drive the nicest cars. They have to have the most beautiful, wonderful partner. They often go through life thinking that other people are jealous of them or envy them. In reality, they're usually envious of other people that have things that they don't have. This makes them extremely uncomfortable. Next, they don't handle criticism well. Again, if you want to upset a narcissist, offer them even a piece of constructive criticism. Even feedback. We won't even call it criticism, we'll call it feedback. Narcissists, they don't handle that well at all. They'll be the first one to offer you criticism. That's very, very common. But as far as being criticized back, they don't handle that. Again, that would cause something that we call narcissistic injury and lead to a narcissistic rage. Anyone that's ever been affiliated or involved with a narcissist knows exactly what that looks like. And basically what that looks like is that when a narcissist doesn't get their needs met, bad things happen. And that's when we see things like emotional abuse. That's when we see things like gaslighting and all sorts of other really terrible bad behaviors, smear campaigns. Narcissists, they don't ever go out quietly. They don't handle criticism quietly. They do not like being challenged. In reality, narcissists actually have very fragile egos, right? They almost have like a false self, a self that they want the world to see, they want to put out into the world, because they can't actually really deal with their real self, which is actually very small and very broken. So they inflate this false sense up really, really big, and so no one can really see the usually very broken child that exists inside. And any type of vulnerability that the narcissist feels is actually very, very frightening, because it directly contradicts this false self of amazing awesomeness that they have developed. Is kind of a protective mechanism for them. So when this gets punctured and the vulnerability seeps in, a narcissist, they don't handle that well. They rage, but really they're not raging at you. Usually they're raging at themselves. They're raging at themselves because their actual self falls short of this false idealized self that they have. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, please make sure you leave them below in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with people that might benefit from this information. I really like it when people share my videos. That's awesome. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to my channel. I release new mental health videos every single week, and I would love it if you became part of this community. Thanks and have a great day.